bed at night thinking about how people that were living in my house couldn't get work, and they did various ways of survival. One way they did was canning. They'd pick up cans 5 cents at a time to just to aid in their survival. Anyway, fast forward into time. In January of 2019, I met Taylor for the first time. We had lunch, and by March, we were having stakeholder meetings, which is a group of people that come together from various organizations, and they have input in how the program is going to work. We came up with the name because universally across the country, even if you were in, across the ocean in England or anywhere, the term ground score association is anything that you find out on the ground that aids in your survival. And so it's very widely known what a ground score is. You could be a cigarette butt, it could be a can, it could be anything. It could also be money, a lot of times clothes even. And then we started in June with our organizing meetings, and it was a very exciting time for us, because even though this program is about us and for us, there's no one that has any over authority in anyone. We built this for us and about us, and even our mission statement, the way that we manage the jobs, was all a consensus building or consensus decision, and everyone is included or is a priority, and it's been a very it's been a very interesting experience. We've done several trash pickups in the Central East Side Industrial Council. They were pretty much our first client, and we had very good success there. Basically, we were ambassadors, and there were 2 ways that organizations that picked up trash used to handle homeless camps. Either they would go in and they would pick up things that houseless people don't consider trash, or they would completely avoid it. The very first time that we went out on the cleanup, I had we went up to the first camp, and right next to that person's tent, they had some bubble wrap and a microwave food container. Both were trying to be picked up by someone. I says, here's a little bit of education. The bubble wrap is going to be used to wrap their precious electronics, and the food container, I'm going to eat out of that until it has a hole in it. Okay. Let's see. Canners is a term that we're going to be using a lot today. Canners are they pick up recyclables, they dig through the trash to find cans and bottles and returnables. The way that they help the environment is that the cans and bottles would end up in the landfill some way, or they're littered along the street. So it's a very important environmental work that we do. And as you know, right now, we have the recyclables or for plastic container or glass container or aluminum can. And we're hoping to advocate to expand that. Opportunity jobs that we'd like to perform are the formal sales of secondhand and unsold goods through flea market, sidewalk vending, consignment, or otherwise. Supporting the provisions of reusable dishware at events, conducting waste audits, where waste audits is basically, we basically say this is how much recyclable material was left in the trash, and we make sure that recyclable material is put in the right bin. And if at all possible, we also try to educate the public on what is actually recyclable and what is not. Training groups about waste reduction and social inclusion, on-site composting and waste sorting services, diversion of reusable and bulky material at collection events, and to sell artwork done by the members, Ground Score members. We also utilize and share the deposit bottle found at events and make crafts or repair disregarded items that we find that can be reused. Okay. And when during the COVID right now, anyone who's actively working because of the risks that they're taking, we're paying $20 an hour. In non-COVID times, we are paying $15 an hour to the members, and who's ever coordinating the event is paid $20 an hour. All right, let's get in there. Okay. The picture that you're seeing right now is, we also taught, that wasn't mentioned earlier. It says, what does Ground Score do? We just recently started doing research, and we just got finished conducting a survey with the houseless community about the Central East Side Industrial District's services that they provide to the houseless community. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, a lot of walking. I probably walked about 100 miles that week, and I worked with some really great people. And you know, we had to get 50 surveys in basically 4 days, and we were up for the challenge, and we did a really great job. Okay. All right. What basically canners through at cleanups, and I've already explained in this, but when it comes to the areas around the Johnson Creek watershed areas, we're also going to probably be looking at, you know, the area around the water, and a lot of times in those areas, you know, it's going to be very important to stay together and you know, ask questions. I want to encourage people that will be participating in that is to, you know, spend time with the person that is being your ambassador. You know, ask about their life, ask about different questions. And the reason is because, you know, we are all a community, and part of the thing that Ground Score really wants to do at the heart of it is to show that we're not any different. The only difference between us and, excuse the terminology, but house folks, is that we live outside. You know, most everything that we do is in the general public, okay? Radically inclusive is a term that means that anyone, and just like Taylor when she was doing my introduction, anyone and everyone can be a part of this. You know, there's a lot of opportunities that we hope to grow on. We're very, very new, and we're very, very excited. The COVID, unfortunately, had you know, slowed us way down. You know, we had several events that had been planned, and this would be the first act. Well, not the first, because we're doing a project right now called the People's Bottle Depot, and but this will be the first trash cleanup in August when we do this, and I'm very, very excited about it. Okay, let's see. All right. Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to get there. Okay. And, you know, I'm not sure how the people's experiences with the houseless community has been. We are doing a poll right now, and your answers are very, very important to us. All that information is completely private. So we really want to get your heartfelt opinion, even if your experiences have been bad, or you know, you have insecurity about it, because those are kind of things that when we do meet for the first time and we're doing our introductions, that we're going to be able to kind of talk about some of the challenges of bringing these two communities together, because actually we're all one community, right? So you know, this is going to be a very important event, and I'm hoping that we have a lot of attendees. Okay, so I think I'm coming close to where I'm at here, and I'm going to just turn it over to Taylor.
Thanks so much, Barbie. I wanted to ask a few questions to you about some of some of the other work that Ground Score does, specifically the advocacy work. Maybe you can share a little bit about some of the advocacy work that Ground Score has done around the trash cans in town. You know, downtown Portland canners, can and bottle collectors, we're starting to notice a lot of locked trash cans, new kind of locked public bins in downtown that they couldn't get access to. So either they were having to not collect cans and bottles from those areas, or they were trying to reach their hand into the hole and then reaching their hand into a space where they couldn't really see where they were putting their hand. So yeah, maybe Barbie, you could share a little bit of the advocacy work that we've done around that issue.
Yeah, I can. Taylor, you're going to have to tell me who is the one place. Was it Metro that we went to speak with about that?
City of Portland.
City of Portland. Okay, we went to the City of Portland a couple different times and met with the people that have designed these trash cans. They started with a kind of a pilot project in the Pearl District where the cans were locked. And, you know, we're dealing with people that could be sometimes incredibly poor, and so it's not like they're wearing gloves or they don't have those pincher things. They're actually reaching into the can and feeling around, which can obviously be dangerous. They can hurt themselves. So we advocated for those cans to be unlocked. Now, the locked cans that are locked out, I hope that they're going to be changing that. But we were able to get them to agree that the new cans that are coming out are going to be unlocked. We also are advocating some other issues around these trash cans, and you know, they tried putting a box on the side where people were to put their bottles and cans, and that still wasn't happening. They were still just throwing them away. Other advocacy stuff that we've done has been, you know, to, you know, kind of or talk to the city officials about hygiene access and how, you know, how safety is very important. And so I'll answer that, Taylor.
Yeah, and with the City of Portland, we actually got a commitment from them that all of the new public trash cans that they're installing now on the east side, there are hundreds of them that they're now installing in the public sphere, that they're going to keep all of them unlocked. So they put a magnet on them instead of a lock. And we consider that a boon because this is a really essential form of income for a lot of different people. I guess, Barbie, the other question that I wanted to ask you, so in August, we are going to be working with Johnson Creek Watershed Council to provide some services at the cleanup event on August 22nd. So there'll be a crew of about 6 of us who are going to be at the event. And Barbie has been lead on a lot of the other types of litter cleanup events that we've done. So yeah, Barbie, maybe you can share a little bit, like how does it work? I mean, when the volunteers come in the morning and we've got our ground score workers there, how do you kind of start, you know, start our work as ground score? How does that usually go?
Well, basically, we get everybody together, and we have an opportunity for, you know, usually it's like different groups so that are going to go to different areas, and so you have one ground score member that will go walk around with each one, and how it's usually worked is that each group has a number. So you have group number 1, and we do kind of an overall introduction. We are what we do, why we do it, what we're looking to do in the future, and then I take a moment and I introduce each one of the ground score members, and they tell you a little bit about themselves, real brief, and then we get on the road, and you know, we start picking up trash, you know, which is super, super exciting because, you know, I will tell you, because we've done a lot of solve cleanups with the Central East Side Industrial Council, that area is really looking great. I mean, it really is. it seems like I think we've done 3 or 4 events with them, and every single one has improved the livability and the trash in that area.
And what's the benefit of having ground score on a volunteer crew? Like, what are the types of services that our ground score workers, what are the benefits of having a ground score worker kind of leading volunteers when we're out, especially engaging with, potentially engaging with the houseless community while we're out doing cleanups? Barbie, what do you?
Oh, the number one thing that I think it does is that, we don't know people's experiences with the houseless community, and so this gives them an opportunity to meet someone that is smiling, that is answering questions, is kind of they demonstrate that who they are. I mean, part of what ground score does is any time a person aids in their own survival, it stops them from it changes their life. It gives them a purpose. If you think about your own life, and if you love the work that you do, even if you kind of don't, it still helps you feel, more self-esteem. And so we're doing two things. Not only are we helping people, realize that the stereotypes about homelessness are wrong. Did I say they're wrong? We're also showing how, the importance of helping your canner out, helping, not being afraid to engage, to smile, make eye contact, because a lot of times the news doesn't paint us in a very good light. So this gives an opportunity for us and the community to come together and break those stereotypes.
Thanks, Barbie. That's exactly right. And I think, some of the other benefits that people have mentioned when we have served on some of these volunteer crews is that, having somebody who is houseless or has experienced houseless, their orientation is really different, right? When they're going out and doing a cleanup, they don't see it as like we're going out and cleaning up after people, which is oftentimes the thought. They go out and feel pride that they're actually providing a waste management service to folks living outside, because a lot of people who are living outside, they don't necessarily, especially out, along the Springwater corridor or places, they might not have good options for disposing of their waste, or they might be blamed for waste that gets left that actually isn't theirs. And so really what ground score workers have been able to do is help people understand that, like, no, they're out there providing a service that probably houseless folks should already have anyways. So to be able to go and kind of give them a bag. So ground score is going to go out, a few days in advance of the event and hand out some bags and say, hey, we're going to have this event in a few days. You're welcome to fill up this bag and we'll come and collect your waste for you. And then also ground score workers really help, as Barbie had already mentioned, the approach for folks out, doing cleanups is like, well, maybe people don't want to go and approach houseless camps because it's like they don't want to bother them. Or the opposite might be that they kind of like trudge into a camp without really thinking about it and clean up things that might not actually be garbage. Or even just going into the camp at all is a bit of an intrusion. They don't really think about that. And so having ground score workers on these crews really helps the volunteers feel comfortable going up to camps and to folks who are living outside and interact with them in a way that maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable doing otherwise. Yeah, exactly. And making sure that people aren't taking personal belongings, and I think kind of reorienting, like Barbie always uses the example of like bubble wrap or, drink containers, things that like we might really see as garbage are really essential objects for folks who are living outside, and they use them in ways that you might not expect. And it is pretty innovative, the types of reuse that we see. So now I think we'll shift. Abby, do you want to move the slide forward? We'll shift. I want to talk about a little bit about a new project, and then hopefully we'll be able to bring on another ground score worker and do another little interview session. So in the meantime, I'm going to share a little bit about a new project that we have called the People's Depot. And the People's Depot really grew out of the COVID-19 crisis, even though it was something that we had been wanting to do for the last year, because we engage with can and bottle collectors. When we have our meeting, we basically have monthly organizing meetings, and anybody's welcome to come. And we try to engage, especially folks who are, either canners, can and bottle collectors, or maybe dumpster divers, or kind of scrappers, reusers, recycled artists even. And we we try to make these meetings really democratic by kind of asking what they want and what their opinions are on things and how should we organize ourselves. And one of the things that we asked early on was like, what do you want for ground score? And most people were talking about like, we want a space and we want our own space. And a lot of people talked about wanting to have their own bottle redemption center, right? These are places that you go to return your cans and bottles, either in a grocery store or you might go to a bottle drop center. So we started kind of exploring how to have our own bottle drop center, but the way that our bottle bill is, right? Our bottle bill is basically what gives you 10 cents when you take your can and bottle back. The way that it is in Oregon is a little bit different than in other states. Our bottle bill, you get 10 cents when you take your can and bottle in, but it doesn't include what's called a handling fee. And that basically gives money to an independent or, you know, bottle redemption center. It basically pays redemption centers for handling and processing materials. And if we had a handling fee in Oregon, we could relatively easily run our own bottle redemption center, but Oregon does not have that. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and some of our new advocacy work related to that. But when the COVID-19 crisis happened, probably a lot of you noticed that you didn't have any more places to take your cans and bottles. And this is because the state suspended enforcement of the bottle bill, which allowed grocery stores to decide if they want to take cans and bottles back or not. And, you know, grocery stores have never really wanted to take cans and bottles. They never wanted to be responsible for this part of the system. And so they said, that's it, we're not going to take them. And that left a huge number of people basically without any place to take their cans and bottles. And this is particularly problematic for people in our community who really rely on that income. And there's really no research that's been done on canners in Oregon or in most parts of the United States. So we don't know how many people that is, what they use that money for, how much material that they're diverting from the waste or from recycle bins. And so we really didn't know how many people this was impacting, but the signs were that it was a major impact because there were a few redemption centers that did stay open. Those are called the bottle drop redemption centers. They're managed by the companies like Coca-Cola, either producers they call them, they're managed by those. They did remain open. There aren't very many of those. And so the ones that did remain open had hours-long lines outside them. And so that drew attention of the state, of the city, of Metro. Everybody was kind of going, oh my gosh, what do we do? There are a huge number of people who, you know, maybe don't have transportation to take their cans and bottles all the way out there. And so the city of Portland actually approached us and asked us if they could basically fund us to start a project that we now call the People's Depot, which are several emergency bottle collection centers. It's basically looks like a dumpster someplace where we hire ground score workers, we hire canners to basically buy cans and bottles from other canners, and then we sort and count those cans and bottles, and we send them back to the producers. So we basically have been able to, with city funding, start a project called the People's Depot. Of course, as I mentioned, this is a temporary project because we don't really have any way of funding it long term. And it doesn't really make sense for the city to fund it long term because our bottle bill, the purpose of our bottle bill is to make companies that are producing this type of waste fund this system. And so, and we would not actually ask for the city of Portland to keep funding it too long because, you know, we also believe in the idea that companies that are generating this type of waste, you know, by packaging their materials in, you know, cans and bottles, should be responsible for this system. So this has led us into, one, understanding a lot more about our bottle bill than we ever thought we would, and now kind of orienting and educating other canners about, like, you know, what is our bottle bill and what would we want if we could change our bottle bill, what would we want? And so we're doing some like initial advocacy around that, making some recommendations for bottle bills and studying bottle bills in other states, and also in Canada to kind of see, like, yeah, if there was a dream bottle bill for canners, you know, that really supported you know, this low barrier type of income generation work for people who really need it, what would that look like? Some of the things that it would look like were obviously a handling fee. So you could have independent depots that would allow, you know, canners to basically organize themselves and formalize their work somewhat to have their own redemption center and also be able to create spaces where they can provide services other kinds of services also for canners. And so I'm going to take a minute here. I see that Christine Alex is a ground score worker, a canner, and she is somebody who was on the ground helping develop and establish the People's Depot right from the very beginning when the COVID-19 crisis happened. And so she's here in Barbie's room right now there, and I'm just going to put her online here if she can maybe unmute herself and just ask a few questions to her about her experiences with the People's Depot. Welcome, Christine. Are you able to unmute your computer there? There you go. Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah. And so I guess I wanted to hear a little bit about your experience with the People's Depot. What were you doing for, what have you done for the People's Depot? What kind of work have you done for the People's Depot, Christine?
Yeah, I know. I did can and bottle sorting and counting between the plastic and aluminum because no one was picking up glass. And I think it's a really great program. I enjoyed working there. Great people, and we're providing a necessary service.
That's great. And can you tell a little bit about like, what are some of the things, obviously when we first started it was kind of a scary thing to do because of COVID and we didn't really know how to protect ourselves and how to protect workers. Can you share some of the strategies that we used to try to keep people safe during COVID?
Gloves, masks, and sanitizer.
Yeah, and social distancing, right?
Yes.
And then what about the people who come to the depot? Have you had any experiences or anything that you want to share about the canners that come? Because we definitely get a line every time we have our depot. We've got more and more canners coming every time.
I think they really appreciate this service. I know I do. I frequently turn in cans myself at some of these bottle sites that Ground Score has established. And I know a lot of the people that use them, and they really appreciate it. I also like to tell people when I see people canning or carrying a bag of cans, I'll tell them about it. And if I have immediate access, I'll give them a flyer.
And what's the difference in experience, you as a canner, what's the difference in going to like a grocery store, like a Safeway or something versus a People's Depot? Like how different does it feel for you?
Well, the lines are a lot shorter and you're working with your own community. And so the people are a lot friendlier. They understand where you're coming from. They're all in similar positions. And there's community there. There's a lot of love.
That's great. And then Christine, one last question. What advice would you have for, people who are on this call today and who, maybe generate cans and bottles and probably live in houses? What advice would you have for how they can support canners in their community or demonstrate their support for them?
Well, if they buy prepackaged drinks, please put them next to the trash or in the recycling bin and not the trash. Paper grocery bags are wonderful to carry. The 6-pack of beer in the cardboard boxes, those are great.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, one surprising thing that we've found, because we are collecting some data when we run the People's Depot, and one question that we ask them is where people got their cans and bottles. And one surprising thing that we found was that, oh, my video is gone, but Christine's is still on. Oh, there we go. One surprising thing that we found is that in certain sites, especially we have one site that's down under the steel bridge on the west side, and almost, a huge portion, the majority of those cans and bottles are actually coming out of the trash. And so there's a reality that we really don't understand the impact of canners. We tend to think, oh, they go through our recycle bin and they take them from the recycle bin and then they put them into the bottle bill system. It would have been recycled anyways. Well, for one thing, that's not actually true because when you put your materials in the recycle bin, that goes to a material recovery facility, and then it needs to get sorted some more. And a lot of those materials are actually being shipped outside of Oregon's borders, and some of that overseas. Whereas if you return cans and bottles through the bottle bill system, all of those materials are processed domestically in the United States, and most of those materials are actually processed in and recycled in Oregon. So that's one difference. But then there's an extra added benefit to canners when they're pulling materials out of the garbage. And what we're finding is that it's actually a lot of material. And so we're really trying to advocate for more research on canners and their impact, and also the impact of the bottle bill on people who really need this form of safety net income. And I guess I just wanted to end today by sharing a little bit about like why are we talking so much about cans and bottles when you guys are probably connected to this webinar because you're going to participate in a cleanup with the Johnson Creek Watershed Council. And the reason for that is that our bottle bill was the first bottle bill developed in the 1970s. It was the first bottle bill developed in the US. And it was created out of concern for litter, right? There was a shift from reusable materials to disposable materials, and a lot of material was ending up in the environment and in the streams and rivers. And so environmental advocates first rallied to ban disposables. They wanted reusable materials on the market. But industry didn't want that. They wanted to keep producing things in disposable containers. And so they really resisted that. And so environmentalists came back again and they said, well, let's start a bottle bill, to make sure that these materials are coming back rather than ending up in the environment. And industry also really resisted that. And industry's response was to say, give us some time, we'll make sure this garbage gets cleaned up. And so that started this movement. In fact, the origin of Solve was really funded by industry as an attempt to kind of prevent bottle bills and also to prevent reusable materials. And so, it's this interesting thing where we, obviously environmental cleanups are really necessary, but they're also a strategy to kind of prevent more sustainable initiatives out there. And so, we think about that with a critical eye, and we also think about kind of the waste management system with a critical eye, and the fact that, litter is a real problem, and it is something that needs to be cleaned up. And, it's also a challenge because our litter collection system is in a large degree reliant on volunteer labor. And so I just wanted to kind of finish up by really sharing our appreciation for volunteers like you guys who may be joining the cleanup on the 22nd, and also just challenge everybody to think critically about our waste management systems, not only about kind of the purpose of litter cleanups and how we could actually prevent materials from ending up as litter to begin with, but then also kind of thinking about how our waste management systems can be redesigned a little bit to be more inclusive and provide more opportunities for people who need lower barrier types of opportunities and who, are in real critical need of income. So that's all I have. We have about 20 minutes, which may be a good amount of time for questions. So I think Barbie is still there somewhere. And then I also just wanted to introduce our invisible hero on this call, Abby, who's another ground score worker. She does a lot of the communications work for us. And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank her for kind of helping facilitate this presentation and some of that stuff. So thank you for joining. And yeah, we'll take questions. It looks like there is one. Okay, one question about where are the People's Depot sites? Yeah, and so we have 3 People's Depot sites. One is kind of an undisclosed location in North Portland, and we operate that in collaboration with a harm reduction organization in town that provides other types of services. So that's kind of our experiment in not only providing can and bottle redemption services, but also other types of wraparound services in collaboration with another organization. So that one, we actually don't share the site just because it is a harm reduction site, which means that they provide other types of resources such as clean needles and other types of services for folks out there. But our other 2 sites are public sites, but I will say that we try to provide the service for canners. It's actually not a service that we're aiming at other folks. We really want to kind of like focus this for canners. So a canner is basically somebody who collects cans and bottles other than their own, right? Going out into the community, collecting cans and bottles. And those sites we have one on Southeast Main and Water Avenue. They're pretty close to the river. And that site actually is a site that you can drive up to. And one service that we do provide there is that we do accept donations of cans and bottles. In fact, this month we're donating all the proceeds from the sale of, or from the purchase, or sorry, we're donating all proceeds from donations to 2 different Black-led organizations in town. One is PALF, P-A-A-L-F, and the other one is Wild Diversity. But in the future, we are kind of strategizing how we might be able to use, you know, once we lose the funding from the city of Portland, if we can't find other funding, either through a change in our bottle bill or by trying to get some funding from producers, from companies and producers, then we may look at trying to fund the People's Depot labor for the People's Depot through donations. And so anybody can donate cans and bottles to us there, again, at that Southeast Water and Main Avenue site. You'll basically, it's every Tuesday from 11 to 1. And you can just drive up and leave your cans and bottles there for us. And I'll leave that information in the chat as well. The other location is every Thursday from 11 to 1, and that's just under the west side of the steel bridge. There behind, there's like a shipping container that Central City Concern uses to provide storage services for houseless communities. So our dumpster is right behind that, and we're there every Thursday from 11 to 1. So even if you're not a canner and you're welcome to come and check us out, or if you want to bring donations, we of course appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Any questions for Barbie too? I think is still on there, even though I don't see her video running. I think Barbie's waiting to be back on video, but so Courtney posed a question that she's really interested in our ideas about the deeper problems with litter cleanups and thoughts about alternatives in the future. You touched on some, but I'm curious if you have more thoughts about this and the systemic litter issues. Yeah, I've thought really deeply, and then maybe I'll see if Barbie has an answer to this. You know, I've thought pretty deeply about the issue of litter cleanups, in part because I also do some work in other parts of the world, kind of networking with other organizations like Ground Score that are basically organizing what we call waste pickers, so canners or other types of people who rely on the informal collection and sale of recyclable materials. And in a lot of countries, especially places where you have really bad problems with marine waste, you know, those issues come from basically incomplete waste management systems, right? An incomplete waste management system is a system where maybe not everybody has collection services, or where litter is leaking into the environment, but it's not being collected. And you know, these are countries that look to countries like the United States for solutions, and they oftentimes try to copy our waste management systems. And I always kind of think about that. It's like, if you're gonna export our waste management system to another country and expect them to be mobilizing like hundreds of people every week to be collecting litter on beaches and waterfronts, etc. I mean, it's just not a realistic expectation. And so that, for me, I kind of came to the conclusion that, you know, even though I think that there is a really great advocacy power of leading litter cleanups, I do think that it's problematic for us to have like really critical waste management services reliant on volunteers. I mean, I think it's great to be able to have volunteers to provide those services, but I don't think that they should necessarily rely on volunteers. And so I would say, you know, it needs to be funded. Litter collection should be funded, and maybe even through extended producer responsibility policies similar to the bottle bill, where, you know, producers and companies really have to pay for the collection and recovery of the materials that they're putting out there on the market. Barbie, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, I do. One thing that we learned from Metro is that better than 70% of the trash that is dumped is done by illegal dumping, and so we also have to think about that. There are not just poor people outside, but there's also poor people in houses, and trash service can be very expensive, and they're left with the decision: am I going to buy that bag of groceries, or am I going to pay my garbage bill? You know, and dump fees can be just as expensive. So, you know, trash cleanups are important for that reason too. Is that we, you know, we have this saying within the homeless community, we're like lint, everything sticks to us. That people assume that this is, that this trash is coming from homeless camps. Sometimes people will dump them like right next to their space, and so in this way, when we do volunteer cleanups, is we're also taking that stereotype off the people that are living in the area that are unsheltered.
Yeah, Barbie, that's a really great point, especially around that Metro statistic that I think it's now 78% they're estimating of the material that you find illegally dumped outside actually comes from housed folks. And they have this whole way that they assess kind of whether it comes from housed or houseless. That doesn't negate the fact that, there is waste out there that does come from houseless camps. And to that, we actually have a new project that's being funded by Metro. It's a project that they started called the White Bag Program, and they are hiring Ground Score to start a new initiative where we will actually be hiring houseless folks or folks who have experienced houselessness to go out with these white bags that have a phone number on it and basically provide them to camps around the city. And those bags have a phone number on it that can be called to have Metro come and pick it up, or the folks living outside themselves can also call, or us as coordinators, we can call to have that collected. So it's kind of an experiment in providing waste management services to folks living outside. And I guess the other answer that Barbie's always saying as well is that really though, we need to solve the issue of homelessness, and we need to have probably a range of different solutions for how people can live if they can't afford housing. And that includes places like where Barbie's living right now. Maybe Barbie, you want to share a little bit about where you're calling us from today?
Well, I'll start by saying that I had been homeless since January 27th, 2015, and in February of this year, so it was a long 5-year journey. I moved into a tiny home community called Hazelnut Grove, which is over in the North Portland part of town. It's completely off-grid. Everything is run by solar and gravity-fed, and then also propane. It's also a peer-run community. We do have, not during the COVID time, we're about to have the first what we call General Assembly meeting that we've had in months because of the COVID outbreak. There's about 20 people that live in this camp. We have a community garden. We often cook together. We spend a lot of time together. And although it's an amazing experience. Lots of trees. The reason that this place is called Hazelnut Grove is because we have a huge hazelnut grove or hazelnut tree in our community garden. And unfortunately, believe it or not, they still consider me homeless when I have a really great house. I even have a completely enclosed porch, which is like my kitchen, and then I have a living space or a sleeping space that has a door between that and the covered porch or the enclosed porch, and just a wonderful yard. And everything here that I'm looking at in my was all something that we found on a street corner or found somewhere in the dirt around here. It's amazing how resourceful that you can get when you're kind of put in this position. Christine also lives here with her husband and her dog, but I personally have lived in every single possible way you could be homeless: doorways, tents on the sidewalk, tent in the woods, sleeping, camping in a van, and also camping in a very small car. So, and I will never regret my experiences. And after my disability, which I have a brain lesion in my speech centers, which caused a lot of difficulties. I was a marketing manager and went from $65,000 a year to zero overnight, and then it just kind of fell into this. It wasn't because I was a drug addict. It wasn't because I was drinking. It was basically, or drinking alcohol or using illicit substance. It was because of a disability. And my husband also has disabilities. And so there's a lot of reasons that people become homeless. The stereotypes are very, very wrong. And part of the heart of Ground Score is we want to help people with a hand up, not a handout. And so that's kind of me.
Thanks, Barbie. Are there any more questions for the day?
So it looks like, I was just looking at the Q&A, it looks like you guys actually inadvertently covered the rest of the questions just through your conversation. I don't know if you saw the Q&A, but it worked out really well. So I just wanted to take a minute and just kind of wrap this up, unless anyone has any last things they want to share. Taylor, Barbie, Abby, or Christine, do you have anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
That's great, thank you.
Cool. So first of all, I just wanted to say really big shout out to Ground Score Association. And you can learn more and donate to Ground Score at trashforpeace.org. They've got their Facebook and their Instagram, Ground Score Association at groundscore.association as well. They've done an incredible job coordinating with us to be on this webinar, and it's no small technical feat. So I just want to say thank you to all of your staff for coming on. Thank you so much, Abby, Barbie, Taylor, Christine, for making the time on this hot day, for coming in on the webinar. And then also we're really excited to be working with you August 22nd for the cleanup, and have you all come out and be liaisons and help us inform our cleanup along the Johnson Creek. So if anyone has questions or wants to reach out, please feel free to contact them on Facebook, Instagram. They also have a website as well. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming. This presentation is also going to be available. It's recorded. It's going to be on YouTube tomorrow. Also, as soon as this recording is over, it's going to stay on the Facebook panel. So if you want to link to it later, come back to it later, you'll be able to. It'll be visible. Please go ahead and also take a look at Ground Score's work. They do incredible work. And as they mentioned, this is a systemic problem, but the solutions they're coming up with and the things that they're doing, really innovative, really great work. So wanted to say thank you guys so much. We really appreciate everyone's time for joining us on the webinar. Our next webinar, we're still finalizing our topic with our next panelist coming on next month. So stay tuned on our Facebook page, Instagram page, and jcwc.org for our next community engagement series. Otherwise, fun things happening. We have the Johnson Creek Cleanup. This is a live in-person event happening the end of August in Portland, Oregon. We will be doing small teams and have lots of precautions available and that will be in place for COVID-19. So if you want more details on that, check out our website, and we're looking forward to hopefully seeing you digitally, online, who knows, maybe in person. It's a brave new world out there, but thank you all so much. Really appreciate Ground Score, and you know, the more that we're continuing our work as an environmental organization, the more that we're realizing that everything is interconnected, and